Youth fam! Hey. Well. Once again, we find ourselves on the interwebs. Raise your hand if you're excited. I know, it's not my favorite either. But here's the good news. We're only here for 3 weeks. And then after that, we have something really excited coming to student ministry. So make sure you put the week of February 21st in your calendars because it's going to be epic. But for now, we're going to head straight into week 2 of Vibes. I'll see you on the other side. So today, I want to start my message with a confession. And honestly, I can't believe I want to say this online. Of all the confessions to put in a sermon, I did not want to put this one online. But I can't change it. I have to get this out. I have to say it. Are you ready? Okay. Here's my confession. I have terrible, absolutely horrendous road rage. It's bad. Okay, let me explain myself and why I'm so dramatic about this. When I was in high school, I used to do this thing where I would carry some golf balls in my glove compartment. And if the car behind me was driving just a little bit too close than I wanted, those golf balls would find a way out of my sunroof and onto the car behind me. Yeah, I know, it's bad. Probably illegal. But look, guys, I'm not that bad anymore. I'm reformed, mostly because I have a passenger in my car now. That passenger's name is Leanna, and I get death threats from Leanna when I have road rage. Take for instance, when I have road rage, it's mostly because someone else has passed me on the interstate. I hate to get passed on the interstate. It's the worst thing in the world. I'm the one that's supposed to be setting the speed, okay? I'm the one that's supposed to be going the speed that everyone else is supposed to be going around me. But if someone has the audacity to pass me on the interstate, my right foot just magically becomes heavier and I start to speed up. And out of the corner of my eye, without fail, every single time I catch Leanna turning towards me, and she's giving me that look, that don't you dare kind of look. And if I do not immediately let up off the gas pedal, I start getting the chads. The Chad. And if she gets to the third Chad, I know that I'm in so much trouble. Leanna hates my road rage, and I hate that she hates my road rage. Once I begged her, I pleaded with her, please just let me have just a little bit of road rage. Just let me get my fix for the day. All right, so maybe you can't actually identify with road rage. You're in middle school. You don't even have your license yet. But maybe you have encountered something like hallway rage. And yeah, I totally just made that up on the spot. But hallway rage is like when someone bumps into you in the hallway at school, and that person makes you do the unthinkable. They make you drop your phone. So you turn to them and you go off. And you say, bro, what's your problem? Like, you walk much? Like, I'm walking here. Like, what you doing, man? That was so Jersey. I'm so sorry. But that's what I call hallway rage. It's kind of like road rage, just less personal and probably less dangerous. Most of you can identify with rage at some point. And maybe you don't call it rage or even anger, you call it frustration. Like, how many of you have ever said, I'm not angry, I'm frustrated? Yeah, 100%. Like when your brother eats all your cereal, like your favorite cereal, you're not mad at him, you're frustrated, right? Or when your parents, for the 1,000th time that day, tells you to do your homework. You're not angry with them, you're just frustrated, right? Or that kid at school that thinks they're so much better than everybody else. Maybe in your frustration, you might actually pray that they fall and faceplant in front of everyone during class change. But like, why do we not like to say we're mad or angry? Why do we instead substitute the word frustration? Is there really a difference between being mad and frustrated? Is there a difference between road rage and road frustration? For the past few weeks, we've been talking about this series called Vibes. We've been talking about our emotions and how our emotions or our vibes can control us. And one of those emotions, one of those vibes that keeps showing up time after time after time, and it ultimately begins to control us and sometimes even take over, is anger. Now, the thing about anger is that it doesn't always look like anger. Most of us could probably identify someone yelling and screaming at us as, they're probably angry at me. That's how we would normally identify that, right? But sometimes being angry with someone means that you're not saying anything at all. You're giving them the silent treatment. Have you ever been on the receiving end of a silent treatment? Like, it's way worse. So much worse. Not only is the silent treatment a way that that person is treating you, but it's a way that they are actually controlling the situation, because they're the one that's holding the power in this whole situation. They're the ones that's withholding all the words. Like, girls, you are so good at this. To make things even more complicated, not all anger is bad. There's anger we feel when we see injustices in the world, when we see things like certain groups of people being treated unfairly, causes that we have passion about not being taken seriously, things like racism, things like people not having access to clean water, or people who don't take care of our planet and they litter, like, rude, okay? But when we see things happening in our world that are wrong, it's actually a good thing to be angry about it. Jesus himself got super angry when people were being mistreated, like flipping furniture kind of angry. So it isn't always bad to be angry. In fact, sometimes anger can be constructive for us. It can move us towards action. But then there's anger that can be destructive. It can push us towards regret. It can cause us to hurt people around us, people that we love and care about. So what are we supposed to do with this? What are we supposed to do about anger? Anger is this powerful emotion. So how do we control it instead of it controlling us? How do we keep destructive anger from taking over and being the boss? Well, today we're going to look at a passage from the book of James in the New Testament. James was the brother of Jesus, but when Jesus was alive and he was walking on earth, James didn't follow him. It was only after Jesus was crucified and came back to life that James was convinced. Eventually, James became a leader in the early church, and he lived in Jerusalem, where he's writing this letter, primarily to Jewish Christians. And this letter is full of wisdom. In this section, this passage we're going to look at, he's offering a very simple principle that almost seems too simple, but I promise you, if we learn this principle, things will start to change. James starts out by saying, "Who is wise and understanding among you?" Now, we hear this word wise a lot, right? But I don't think a lot of us actually really focus on what the word wise means. Wise is different from being smart because you can be born smart, but wisdom is learned. It's something that you learn from your experiences and you gain wisdom. It's being this understanding that your words and your actions have consequences. That's basically what James is saying. But he continues on by saying this: let them show it by their good life, by deeds and humility that comes from this wisdom. So James is making a connection here. He's saying that wise people are humble. But what does humility look like? Well, it starts with gaining a proper view of yourself. So 1, don't see yourself as the exception to the rules. 2, you don't think the world revolves around you and your desires. 3, you don't think that you deserve better treatment than everyone else. And 4, you don't see everyone else as a means to an end that you want. James is saying that wise people, they don't do those things. But then he continues and he says, but if you harbor bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast about it or deny the truth. Harbor basically means to let something stick around. If you let stuff stick around, that makes you think you're better or more important than someone else. James is saying don't deny that you feel that way. Call it out in yourself. Then he goes on to say, for where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you will also find disorder and every evil practice. Let's say that in a different way. When pride or arrogance gets lodged inside of us, it comes out in our actions. Not exactly great news, James, but he doesn't leave us hanging. A couple of verses later, he asks this question: what causes fits and quarrels among you? Now, I bet I could probably stop right here and everyone would have an answer to that question. Like parents with unrealistic rules, younger siblings that will not stop being annoying, that friend that will not text you back, or your stepdad that always acts like he's right, or people with obnoxious TikTok accounts. Like we all have an answer of things outside of us that cause problems. But James isn't buying it. He answers his own question by asking another question. Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? In other words, your mom may drive you crazy. Your little brother may be annoying. But what actually causes the arguments? It's not them. It's you. More specifically, what's in you. This is a big deal because as long as we think the problem is someone else, that it's their behavior, their character, their mistake, we're never going to deal with the anger problem inside of us. We think the problem is people not doing things our way. But James is saying the problem is that we don't get it our way. Now, you may disagree because maybe you feel like the things you want are the things that you have to earn. Things like freedom, respect, trust, and responsibility. And when you don't get those things that you feel like you have earned, it doesn't seem fair. And honestly, you're right. But James isn't talking about what is fair and what isn't. He's saying if you want to get to the root of your frustration and your anger, you need to be willing to admit that the problem is in you. The problem is when you don't get what you think you deserve. So, what do we do? Well, we have to change the script. When other people aren't acting like we think they should, or we aren't getting what we think we deserve, we have to change what we say. Instead of saying he's being selfish or she's being annoying or goodness, they're being rude. Instead, we say, you know what the problem is? I'm not getting what I want. Now, I understand that sounds absolutely terrible, but I'm telling you, when you start to say that, relationships change. Your frustration level changes. Your anger changes. Why? because you're no longer looking to other people as a reason for feeling the way that you feel. Because as long as you're looking to other people as a reason for feeling the way you do, other people will always have control of your emotions. On the other hand, when you start admitting that the problem is that you're not getting what you want, you get the control back. And isn't that what we all want when it comes to our emotions? We want to control them. Based on what we've talked about today, here are my questions for you. What is your relationship with anger like? Do you control it? Or does it control you? If I were to ask your coach, your mom, your dad, your brother, your sister, your classmates, your friends, what would they say? Because if anger is controlling you in any of those relationships, then it's controlling you way too much. And the only way to beat it, according to James, is with humility. And humility says, it's not all my fault, but I'm going to own my part of it. And my part of it has to do with me not getting my way when I want it. So when you feel anger and frustration, or whatever you want to call it, rising up in you, when you're in that disagreement with a parent, a step-parent, a coach, a friend, a sibling, ask yourself, what am I not getting that is causing this anger? Because even if you aren't the whole problem, humility means recognizing that you are at least part of the problem. And when you learn how to recognize that, the emotion of anger begins to lessen its control over you. The good news is for those of us that follow Jesus, we follow someone who has led the way in this. Jesus said no to getting his way time and time again. In fact, the Apostle Paul wrote about this very thing when he talked about Jesus. He said this, who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness. Jesus had every reason and every right to get his own way, but he didn't. He gave up what he wanted so that we could know that we were valuable in God's sight. Paul starts talking about Jesus and his humility towards the beginning of this book by saying this, therefore, if you have any encouragement from being united with Christ, if any comfort from his love, if any sharing in the Spirit, if any tenderness and compassion, then make my joy complete by being like-minded, having the same love. Did you catch that? He tells us to be like Christ, and then he tells us what Christ is like, humble, when we had every reason not to be. Jesus surrendered his way when he could have easily fought for it. Following the example of Jesus is how we keep anger from controlling us. Think of it this way. Because of Jesus, anger doesn't have to be the boss of you. I really believe following Jesus will make your life better. I really do. Because when you follow him, he nudges you away from self-centeredness, arrogance, and pride, and he moves you towards humility and love for other people. And as that happens, you find that anger no longer has the hold on you that it did before. And less powerful anger is a win for everyone involved. As we wrap up today, I want you to begin to imagine what life would look like if anger didn't control you. None of us get this right completely, or even all the time. But as you begin to think through this, process some ways that you can take some steps in the right direction. In your personal circumstances, what would it look like for you to choose wisdom and humility over anger? Let's pray. Father God, we come to you tonight, and having just preached a super practical, a super hands-on, dirty, get in the mud kind of message, God, I praise you for these kind of messages. I praise you that I have the ability to speak this truth into the lives of teenagers that are sitting under the sound of my voice. So God, I pray that even though God, this isn't some big theological message where we're learning the big mysteries of you. God, we're learning the nitty-gritty. We're learning what it means to follow you. And to follow you means that we're not allowing anger, we're not allowing frustration, we're not allowing that rage, that natural sinful nature that we have in us to control us any longer. Because we're saying that, hey, we know how to react to this. We know how to react to anger, and we know that it's by being humble. We know that it's by living through humility and saying that, yes, it might not all be my problem, but I'm going to recognize that I have at least some part in this. And that changes everything. And you told us that time and time again. You've been the perfect example. So God, I pray that we take what you've given us today. I pray that we take it and we put handles to it, and we carry it out to the rest of our school week, the rest of our time with our friends, with whatever we find ourselves in for the next week. God, I pray that we would just be able to apply this to our lives. Thank you for this time together. We ask these things in your holy and precious name, Jesus. Amen. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us at Youth Live Online. I know that this is different. I know that you didn't want to go back to online services, but hey, it's where we are. And we're going to be right back here next Wednesday night at 6:30. We're going to be doing this for a few weeks, and then hopefully we can meet in person. Anyways, we love you guys. We miss you so much. We hope you're doing great. You're staying safe and staying active. We love you, and we'll see you at Youth. Peace.